Susan, and I'm kind of excited today because this is my first Thursday that I am releasing my Studio Chronicles. I always have a lot going on in my studio. I work from one painting to the next to the next. Sometimes I'm matting, sometimes I'm framing, sometimes I'm varnishing, sometimes I'm researching, and I'm always busy. I always have lots of plates spinning. I wanted to bring you in and share some of the things that I do throughout the week. I'm going to be releasing a different video each week. I'll be releasing them on Thursdays at 10 a.m. Today I'll be sharing a watercolor that I did just the other day, and it was inspired by a conversation I had with a lady in a restaurant who was saying that she tried watercolors, but she found she was so tense and stressed out by the experience that she didn't really enjoy it. And I thought, oh my goodness, of all things, watercolor is the most fun because it creates unexpected magic as long as you approach it in a playful way. So today I'm going to bring you a very playful exercise. I took 3 colors and a piece of paper and I just played. So I hope that you will consider playing along. At the end of my video, I'm going to be talking a little bit about tools. Each week I want to mention a little bit about some of the tools that I use in my studio. Today I'm going to be showing you the difference that a little varnish made in some of my acrylic paintings that I had done. It made a world of difference to put varnish on them. It enriched the colors. I'll show you right now the end result. This really snazzed up when I put some varnish on it yesterday, and I think you'll notice how rich these colors are, especially the darks. The darks had died away, and I'll show you that. And I have one more. This one, similar colors. These dark backgrounds were very dead. These are acrylic paintings, and the varnish just brought the color right out. So I'll talk about that at the end of this video, but in the meantime, stay with me because we're going to just play around with some watercolor. So I'm taping off one sheet of watercolor paper to make 4 quadrants, and I'm just tossing down randomly some water to wet the surface. And now, just to activate the surface, I am drawing with an Inktense pencil. It's a little bit more saturated than watercolor pencil. There is no right or wrong tool. I like to just pick up what I grab and begin to activate, and so I'm going in and out of wet passages. Where the pencil reaches water, it's a little more saturated. And now, just for fun, I'm going to paint with my tube of paint. I'm using unorthodox methods today because I like to experiment. I like to play. So I am squirting watercolor paint out onto the paper, right out of the tube. And some of it is touching wet areas, some of it is not. Working with a limited palette of 1 yellow, 1 blue, and soon to be 1 red. As you can tell, at the end of this painting session, I'll be taking these pieces of tape off, and I will have 4 little paintings. I love to paint with a palette knife. I'm wetting the palette knife a little bit so that the paint moves around. But I do like the fact that this paper isn't very rough, but it still drags, gives you the wet brush effect. Here I'm putting my red into a dish, and I'm going to get a paintbrush that's more of a mop. I have water in the brush, and it's a soft sort of mop brush, and I'm squeezing the paint out of the brush and putting drips onto this playful painting. Just having fun, seeing how the wet paint mingles on the page. Some of this will dry more saturated than other because of the variation of water that I'm using in the brush. When I painted with the tube of paint, that's going to remain very saturated, but with this application where I'm bringing water to the dish with my brush laden with water, there's considerable dilution of the paint. As usual, I have as much paint on me as I do on my painting. And I'm splashing some color so that in some areas the paint will move on the paper. Now that I have a red, a blue, and a yellow, I am using a very, very dark color here because I wanted some really saturated color. This is a Mayan dark blue. It almost looks like black, but it does have a blue hue, and it's a beautiful, beautiful color. But it's a neutral. It's kind of more of a neutral than any of the other colors, so I'm using it as my neutral. It is much richer, more beautiful than a tube of black watercolor, which has sort of a dead look when it's dry. This Mayan blue has really a lovely, rich look to it. And here I've picked up some red into my paintbrush and it's moved around a little bit. So the whole point of this painting is that the paint is going to mingle somewhat on the paper. I don't have much water in the brush now. It's very saturated. I'm squirting the paint right onto the brush to apply it because I don't want this to dry lighter than it is when I put it down. Watercolor almost always dries lighter because we dilute it, and then when it dries light. Acrylics dry darker. I'm squirting this a little bit. It's a dry day, and I want the paint to move a little bit more, one color into the other, mingling kind of randomly. There's no right or wrong to this. I'm not doing this with any plan whatsoever. And if I don't like these paintings, I will have not lost anything except a piece of paper. But I always, always learn from experimentation, trial and error. This way, I figure out some things that I like, some things that I don't like. I'm dragging paint from one area to the other with the corner of my palette knife. Sometimes I'm scratching paint away. If it's just damp, sometimes it goes back to the white of the paper. But if it's wet, I can drag it from one color to the next. I love this look, this method of using this tool, this palette knife. It's a mark that I particularly like. I'm very fond of saturated color. I'm not much for an emaciated watercolor look. I don't like pale color. These are colors that I would not ordinarily use. In fact, I opened my drawer of watercolors today and I did not look at what I was pulling out. I just knew that my hand was in the red pile, the yellow pile, and the blue pile. And so these are the colors that came into my hand. And this is a really nice way to discover the properties of new color. I'm splashing color around a little bit. I'm using, by the way, quinacridone rose, lemon yellow, and let's see, manganese blue. So I'm going in with my quinacridone rose tube and I'm adding some more color because when the initial color dried on the page, it was not very saturated. And why is that? It's because I used a thirsty brush and I went into the water and I picked up the paint in the white dish, and the fact that I introduced that much color made it, when it started to dry, it made it dry light. So I'm going back in and I squirted some more color there and I'm pushing it around with my palette knife into these. The paper is not dry, so the edges will be softened a little bit here and there. I'm not after a beautiful painting, so I hope you don't worry that I'm just going to be disappointed by this. All I'm doing is exploring what these paints do when I apply them with this unusual tool. And I'm having fun. The worst thing that can happen here is I waste a piece of paper. But if you stick around, you're going to see I took the tape off, and you'll discover with me another way that we can use this type of painting, even if these four pieces don't really produce beautiful paintings or interesting paintings. You just watch. So I have a template here that I have cut out of a plastic sheet, and I've drawn 6 squares into my notebook. Now this particular painting, one of these quarters felt like it was a finished painting, but I have these others that, I don't know, compositionally they don't do anything for me. So I'm going to cut out a little viewfinder and this viewfinder will help me find little paintings. You watch. This is such a fun way to practice composition. There's no right or wrong here. My guess is that you will find you're probably seeing some compositions that you would have chosen. And I'm not choosing the ones you thought of, no doubt. But don't feel bad, because I can see some things now that I'm looking back on this that I might have done differently. But I find this you know, there's no right or wrong, and what I'm doing here is practicing intuition, practicing composition. Whether I ever refer back to these thumbnails or not, that's my option. I could look at these and consider them sketches for large paintings if I decide there's something about them that I would like to borrow. And if I don't do that, the worst thing that has happened here is that I have had fun playing with watercolors, and I have been practicing my eye to come up with compositions that please my eye. So there are a couple that I have ready for my sketchbook. There we go. There's no right or wrong. I just have to decide which direction do I like best. Now, I left this in the video so that you could learn from me what not to do. In this case, I used a glue stick, obviously, and I thought, oh, I have read and heard many people have used a glue stick to collage into their book. Well, I don't know if you noticed, but that glue stick caused that paper to curl right up. So I'm using gel medium, and I put the gel medium on the paper, and then I put the gel medium on the back of the sheet of paper that I'm gluing down. I wanted this to stick. We'll see if that helped. I've never run into this problem before, and I've done a lot of collage into this notebook, in fact. But I think having put that glue stick down, it made this paper curl, and now this is the third application of glue that I've put down. And it's not the last. I like to keep the matte medium or the gel medium off my palette knife if I can, using a brayer to push that down. I decided here that my viewfinder was not big enough. I wanted a nicer little mat to find paintings with. So here I'm cutting another one a little bit bigger. Word to the wise, leave yourself some space. This is much nicer, a much nicer keyhole, if you will, or a little mat. This way, I can really see a lot better without being distracted by the rest of the page. There were a lot of options here with this particular painting. There were numerous ways that I could have done this, but I have to make a decision. I love red, so I'm going for the use of quite a bit of red here. I have to be careful that I don't overlap with the other drawing that I did, and I'm cutting out a couple more here. Okay, I'm still not happy with that. Still adding more gel medium, trying to get that first bit glued down. I really believe that it was the stick, the glue stick, that caused the problem in the beginning. I like to use a palette knife when I'm gluing gel medium because I don't get my fingers all messy. I don't like to wear gloves when I'm in my studio. There's a lot going on in this particular painting. I love the darks. I went right for that first dark. I really like that. So that's going down. Have to decide what juxtaposition. I'm putting the dark at the bottom. Here I'm using my matte medium instead of the gel. Just experimenting with various things. Usually I don't use matte medium with paper that's as heavy as watercolor paper. I pretty much strictly use matte medium for lighter weight papers like sketch papers and newsprint and that kind of thing when I'm gluing. And in this case, the matte medium was sort of sloppy enough that I had to get a Kleenex and clean it up around the edges, and I smeared the watercolor. So that was not ideal. Here, I didn't find exactly a square out of this piece, but I found some pieces that I will cut and collage together that matched up nicely. And there you go. Now here's my page, and I'm using Copic pen, I believe, or a calligraphy pen, I'm not sure, but it didn't give me the saturation I was looking for, so I got out a Sharpie. And unfortunately the Sharpie started to skip whenever it hit the gel medium. There you go. I just could not make that Sharpie work. So learn from me, go to your Posca pen, and that will paint right over that matte medium. It will paint over the gel medium and give me a nice black frame around my my little collages. I like to put a black frame around them. It just seems to finish them nicely. And I'm pretty happy with these little compositions. It was a fun exercise. All in all, it took me about, I would say, 45 minutes, and I learned a lot. Finally, I want to show you a little something in my tools segment that I hope to do each Thursday. And by the way, thanks for staying with me. Give me some feedback as to whether you think this approximately 20 to 30 minute weekly video will be of any value to you. I want to show you today the results of using Minwax polyacrylic. It's an acrylic crystal clear top coat, and I always use a glossy top coat varnish for my acrylics because it brings the richness of the dark colors. Now you have a choice. You can use that shiny surface, glossy surface as your final coat, or you can go in and use a satin or a matte finish as your final coat, depending on which you prefer. But the glossy first coat is the key to bringing out the richness of the color. I'm going to drop in some examples here. You take a look. Okay, about 2/3 of the way up this painting, I have varnished the top. Same way here, about a halfway up, I varnished from the top down, and this is a close-up where the top half is varnished and the bottom half is not. And another close-up. I think it's obvious where the varnish landed. Thank you for joining me. I hope to see you next Thursday.